Hey, it's been a minute. Welcome to the latest episode of Lean In Leander. So I inadvertently took a little bit of a summer break from the podcast. Nothing that I had planned out specifically, but between work and the weather, things just kind of got away from me a little bit. But I'm back, and I start again here in August with a great interview, despite my forgetfulness as far as camera angles are concerned, for those of you who watch the videos. But otherwise, it's a great conversation with Mike and Kim Brune, who are the owners and proprietors of the Fifth Element Brewery, which is a new hangout, if you will, here in Leander. And I just really got along with them from the get-go. Had a brief conversation with them ahead of filming the podcast, and just thought they were the nicest people I've met in a really long time. So I wanted to make sure and give my audience a little bit of an insight as to how they're approaching their business and the craft of brewing beer, which I'm very fond of myself, as a matter of fact. I haven't gotten into actually brewing my own beers yet, but maybe this will be enough to push me over the edge and get me to make that commitment. Probably not. I got so many other things going on that it's hard enough just to do these types of passion projects, but nonetheless, I really enjoyed my time with them. I enjoy going to their location and spending some time there. Great beers, great food, great atmosphere. I definitely recommend this, and I certainly hope that you'll enjoy my conversation with Mike and Kim, which is coming up right now. Hey folks, I'm here at Fifth Element Brewery, and I'm with Mike and Kim Brune, and we're going to talk a little bit about their location, how they got here, who they are, what kind of beer they make, all sorts of stuff. So let's get started. Thanks for taking some time, guys. I really do appreciate this. So I want to start with a little personal history, because you guys got a nice little, and we've got a weird connection. So you guys got a nice little story. I want you how you all met, and how this whole thing came to fruition. Okay. So let's start with that.
Actually met online, believe it or not, and so
it's not unusual now, right?
Yeah, it's not
no longer a claim to fame.
Not unusual these days, and yeah. So then, as our relationship developed, we started talking through various things. And Mike had really always wanted to do a brewery. He had homebrewed for many years, and he was born in Germany, so he has that connection to
nice
beer.
Tidbit there.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so once we kind of really started talking seriously about it, I said, because he's the cautious one and I'm the let's go take risks and do it. And so I said, okay, you got to stop talking. At this point, I'm going to put together a business plan and a pro forma, and we're going to submit it. And if we get an SBA loan, you're doing this business. And so here we are.
Right. So just an aside really quick, the fact that you have the flaming red hair and he's kind of at the more conservative glasses, I think most people figure that out right out the gate.
It's a little bit of a fire and ice situation.
It's a giveaway.
That's all I'm saying. That is true. We got engaged in Iceland, and that was what he said.
Nice.
Will you be the fire to my ice?
Oh, very cool.
Thank you.
See, look, we're all sorts of simpatico.
Yeah.
We know these things. Anyway, that's great. So did you develop your passion or your love for brewing in Germany, or is it something that's just like genetically there?
I think that's where I developed my palate. I spent a lot of summers there. I spent a lot of time there. As a rule follower, I didn't really get into drinking the beers there until I was of legal drinking age.
Gotcha.
But what I didn't realize is I was drinking non-alcoholic beer as soda growing up. I knew malts beer as a soft drink, and
Really?
it's essentially, kind of a non-alcoholic beer. But it's just a beautiful thing. It's almost like a root beer, but more malty and everything else. And that was just my favorite beverage. I grew to have a palate that really enjoyed that. And so conversely, when I came of drinking age, it was a really easy transition to move to beer. And
so what would that be like your first beers, what's your memory of your very first beer? Do you know what it was?
Oh gosh, I remember sitting on my grandma's porch in Germany, And my cousin was like, "Hey, let's have a beer and cook a bratwurst." Like the most stereotypical German activities, just overlooking this beautiful farmland. And I was like, "Are you sure it's okay?" Like, I'm like, "I'm only 16," and he's like, "That's fine here. We're good." Or maybe I was 18, whatever it was. I was legal drinking age at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, go for it. Enjoy it." But part of me had a little bit of guilt still, knowing that back home it was kind of a no-no, and I was like, it's all good. And so I came home and I just had this love of this product that I couldn't enjoy at home the way that I did over the summer. But I never lost the love for it. And, when I came of age, I started homebrewing almost immediately using my mom's tamale pot.
Nice.
That's kind of where I started.
A little tang in that first
Yeah,
brew, right?
exactly. It already had some seasoning there. And, back then, it wasn't a big deal. People really weren't homebrewing. I used to have to drive to Las Cruces, New Mexico, to buy ingredients, So the way I kept myself motivated as I did that hour drive, I was like, I'm buying ingredients for the next month. I'm brewing twice. So I've got to brew, I've got to enjoy, I've got to repeat. And that's how I kind of kept myself on track.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings, I was going to go there, but you mentioned Las Cruces, so now I will. That's our connection. So I'm from El Paso, and you're from El Paso.
Yes.
We went to, you went to Cathedral High School?
Right? Cathedral High School, class of 06.
Class of 06.
Viva la Cate.
That's hilarious. So I'm back. I'm from the old 915.
Yep.
Went to Coronado High School. And I was gone well before you were there, so it's all good. But I just thought that was interesting because you mentioned a couple of things and it was a connection. I was like, okay, I got to really sit down with this guy now. So that's a great origin story. So now fast forward a few years, you've been homebrewing for a little bit, and did you start to develop your own recipes or your own kind of approaches to certain types of beers, a Grolsch or a Pilsner or an IPA? What was your favorite?
Well, so I started, as Kim told you, I'm very risk averse. So I started really slowly. I started with, the regular, almost pre-made brewing kits. And every brew, I would change one thing. So I would know exactly how that element would play into the recipe going forward. And so baby step, baby step, baby step, baby step, until we started doing all grain brewing and developing our own recipes and everything else. So it's been, some of the beers we have in our tap room are over 10 years old recipe-wise.
Wow, okay, yeah. That's cool. That's a neat insight. I don't think a lot of people necessarily think about that when they think about beers. They're like, oh, you're brewing a Pilsner, so there's a recipe for Pilsners. It's not like baking a cake.
Right.
It's a lot more involved, right?
A little bit, yeah, because every time you brew, you look at your product, you taste it, you're like, maybe I can do this better. Maybe I can make it a little bit more crisp. Maybe I can make it a little more bright. Maybe I can get a little truer to style, because that's something that we try to do. We try to pay respect to all the traditional brewing regions of the world by creating our water profiles from scratch. So our Winston's Brown is a more hard water recipe compared to some of our others, because that is an English style beer and their water is typically a little bit harder. So all of our beers are made from scratch, ground up, from the water to the grain that's selected, the hops, everything else.
That's fascinating.
The whole nine, yeah.
So I have a little bit of insight into some of those things, but I never even considered like the quality of the water per se.
I mean, that's your biggest ingredient. So, it makes a huge difference. So we have an RO system so that we can start from scratch and build the profile however we want.
So you're literally affecting the chemical profile of the water. Is
Correct.
that a fair way to say it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
We add all the minerals, salts, and adjuncts to create the profile that we need to make the water as it would be in other parts of the world.
I had no idea that it went that deep.
And not everybody does that,
right.
But that was something that we really wanted to do because we wanted to have true to style beers.
Wow, that makes a difference. Because true story here, I like beer, but. What's fascinating about that is that, not to your degree, okay, because obviously I'm not a connoisseur at that same level, but I do go through the flavor profiles, and it'd be very interesting that I'll drink a beer of a certain style at one location, and then I drink the supposedly same beer somewhere else, and the flavor profile is completely different.
Yeah.
It just tastes different. And now I know that might be fundamentally from the water.
Yep.
Yep,
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, you learn something new every day.
Yep.
That's
and
awesome.
and it's been a big collaboration. You know, the starting from the ground up was actually Tino Herrera's idea. He was our original head brewer. We started as a homebrew club many moons ago. Kim and I were homebrewing, doing homebrew comps, kind of on the circuit. And another connection to you as well is that Tino's also from El Paso.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so we had this guy, he kept beating us. We're like, what's going on? You know, wow, you've got some real talent here. Can we sit down and talk? We found out we're from the same hometown. He's cousins with one of my lifelong friends. We clicked immediately. And his philosophy on beer and our beer philosophy just melded completely. And that's where Fifth Element was born, and our philosophy on drinkability and traditional with a community-centric aspect started to develop.
No, I think that's great. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and you gave me a great segue here, was beyond beer. You know, what are some of the core missions and some of the purposes that you have? And it sounds like you have a much more holistic purpose in this particular business effort.
Absolutely. For us, Fifth Element Brewing is more than a brewery and a beer garden. We want Fifth Element Brewing to be Fifth Element Brewing, beer garden, and gathering place. That's what we want to be. Just a place where people can come and enjoy themselves, eat, drink, be merry, have fun, spend time with your family, make memories, connect with people. We just want to be a catalyst for social interaction, for community involvement. You know, that's really what we're all about.
Yeah, I would add too that, you know, it was really important for us to have a big outdoor space like this. So we could have started in, you know, a shopping mall type space, but we really wanted an outdoor area where families could come with their kids and their dogs and hang out. We wanted to be able to do community events. We wanted to partner with different charities. And we never really wanted to be big distributors. So our plan is always we'll sell beer to go, but we're not trying to be in the grocery stores. We're trying to be a place that people come and feel like they're a part of.
What's really interesting about that, and I don't think you're alone in that. I think there are a couple of other brewers that I'm familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
You can even point right down the street. What's really interesting about that approach is, so my personal, besides the fact that I'm a Mexican American, so I'm very Latino, but I'm a Europhile by nature. Like, I love the UK. I've always loved everything about the UK. And when I was younger, when I moved to Houston, there was a pub. It was a traditional British pub.
Yeah.
It was called the Ale House. Okay, and it was, I mean, darts,
cask
the
ale.
whole 9 yards.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it was true to form. And I was like, man, this is such a cool idea. And it really was a gathering place. That's where I met my wife. That's where I met most of my adult friends. It was just one of those things that was just drawn there. And what always struck me was like, why don't Americans pick up on this? Like, this doesn't seem like, you know, there seems to be like, you know, I don't want to go there or whatever. And I'm like, there needs to be an American version of a European pub. And when I went to the UK, we found a little pub by the apartment we were staying at, and one night, and there was a ton of people there. It was like everybody went there, and you knew that there was the whole neighborhood that was there.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is so cool. Why can't we do this in America?
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is my take. Okay, speaking strictly for myself, there is something that's burgeoning in that space, and I think it's the combination of the beer garden, okay, and the brewery. I think that is starting to become a thing here in America because it gives people somewhere to go with space, and Americans need space.
Yeah.
Okay, they won't go to a little pub because they don't want to be in a little pub. They want space.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are onto something here. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
And you know, you bring that up. We love traveling too. We love going to Europe. And you know, in Germany, that's one of the big things too, is that every little town has their local pub, and that is the gathering space.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, lifelong relationships are formed there. And so we really wanted to replicate that as much as we could.
I think that's great. I honestly think that's great. I think it plays right into the cultural ethos here in Leander because it is very communal. It does strike me. I've been here for 5 years. There are communities within the community that tend to gather together. I'm sure that's true everywhere, but here, just you're a little more attuned to it. Yeah, the other place I think of is St. Arnold's out in Houston.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Once they built that facility across from town, that place is great.
Yeah.
And that is super cool. I wish that for you, okay? I really do. I mean, I think
Thanks.
that's
Thanks.
awesome. You guys have a little bit of a different plan, but still, I love your beer. Okay, so
Thank you.
there's a lot of independent brewers in Texas. What, other than what we've just discussed, sets Fifth Element apart? Like, how are you guys different?
Well, I think the reason Fifth Element is different is because we're crafted for you. We are crafted for the community.
Look at that, he's in
The-
natural. Look straight
The
at the
Fifth
camera.
Element is the human element. It's connection. It's the catalyst of everything that happens after you touch the glass. And, Reinheitsgebot tells us you need 4 ingredients to make a beer: water, hops, yeast, grain. But for us, smack dab in the center of everything is the human element represented by the thumbprint. And that's why we do it. If I wanted to brew for myself and take the Fifth Element out, it would have stayed in my garage. But we are here for the community. We're here for Leander. We want to hear from the community. We want to know what everybody's excited to drink, excited to do as far as community events, what have you. We're more than a brewery. We're a gathering space. We want to hear from the community. We want to do things that people are excited about, even if it's outside of the scope of beer and just a family event, family activity, concert, festival, what have you.
I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. I mean, it's to aspire to that. I think is unique, and I really do appreciate that. When you told me about the logo and you told me what it meant, I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Because my first thought was, so the movie,
Mhm.
and apparently you've never even seen the movie.
I've not seen the movie yet. It's something I'm on the fence about because I believe so strongly in our mission that the Fifth Element is the human element, and that's what it represents for us, that I would hate to kind of have too much overlap from the movie,
You
because
don't
I
want to
hear
conflate the two.
exactly, because I hear it's a phenomenal piece of cinematography. I hear that it's got a beautiful message, and we're just trying to keep our identity as it was developed to be and not have too much sci-fi crossover.
Okay, so here's an idea for you. You can take it for what it is.
Okay.
It's just a thought that comes into my head right now. I'm like, let's do Lean and Leander movie night at Fifth Element, and your first feature needs to be the Fifth Element.
You know what?
I'll do that for you. Okay. All right.
There goes our brains
Yeah,
right
I guess.
together.
Wow.
I think that's awesome. We
That's-
can do it outside.
yep.
We'll get one of those big blow-ups.
Big blow-ups.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
All right.
Awesome. All right. When it's cooler,
Yep.
I'm not going to do it right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want people melting.
We'll do
Oh,
it
I
in the
know.
fall.
Ah, that's
The
awesome.
misters and patio umbrellas help, but they're it's still triple digits.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, that's great. I love it when things come together like that. So obviously you guys are really excited about your business and you're enthusiastic and all that stuff. But tell me about some of the joys, obviously, and some of the challenges in starting a new business.
Well, that's a good one for you, Kim.
Okay, I'll start with challenges first, so we can end on the good note. So doing something like this in a smaller town can be really difficult. We renovated an old house, and the space, it took us a while to get through the city, and sometimes what the city wanted us to do would change. So that prolonged the amount of time that it took us to get up and running. It's still a little bit of a challenge, certain things like, signage and things like that, to really kind of figure out how we can market ourselves and still, be within the confines of what we're allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I would say, is the biggest challenge. COVID also was a challenge, but nobody could have predicted that. So,
Right.
but we did buy this property in 2018. And then took about 2.5 years to get through all of the city part of it, and then COVID hit. So that's kind of what delayed us.
Right. So I remember we talked about this when I first met you,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was real interesting to me. I serve on several committees within the city, and I made the conscious decision to get involved and be active in city, happenings, whatever.
Right.
When I first moved here. my wife and I were driving by one day, and I guess you guys had put up the two beer steins, that little signage that's outside.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that and we're like, wait, what's going on over there? And so we were real curious. We drove around and we kind of looked in the windows and we're like, hey, this looks like a brewery. So I was like, well, that's really odd. I knew nothing about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started asking around, and nobody seemed to know what you guys were doing over here, which was really odd.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I literally asked in an economic development meeting, what's going on across there? What do you mean? I was like, yeah, that place that's right on the other side of the tracks. Da 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 da. Nobody knew, and I'm like, this is really interesting. I really thought you guys were just rebels without a cause. I was like, they're someone who owned the house. They decided to make a brewery. They're just going to do it. They don't care.
Oh, that's
caution
funny.
to the wind. I was like, that. Good to know that you guys had a plan, but still, it was just like nobody knew.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
weird.
Well, and I think because we had started the process so far back,
That's what it was.
none of those people are there anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly
you know,
what it
the entire team has turned over, I think, twice
Mm-hmm.
since then.
And I mean, that's part of, and not to get too far into this, but that's part of the issues and some of the challenges when you have the absolutely explosive growth
Right.
that this area has had. I mean, it's not just Leander, it's Georgetown, it's Liberty Hill, it's Round Rock. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all the communities in and around Austin just blew up. And so you have that problem. You're still struggling with like, oh yeah, we have stuff on our city ordinances that were basically designed for cities that had 10,000 people.
Right.
We have 100,000 now.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, you kind of need to maybe revisit those things and do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
I'm glad to hear that you guys worked through those challenges.
We did, absolutely. I'm nothing if not stubborn. So I would say the joys. Honestly, it's the people. You know, Mike and I try to be here a lot. We really feel like it's important because of what our ethos is and why we did this. We want one of the owners to be here a lot of the times, and it's great. We already have some regulars. You know, we know their names, and that's just it's heartwarming to see that. We've got a couple people from the community. There's this one dad and his kids that come in almost every weekend and play games and hang out for like 2 hours and then leave, and that's just really cool.
Yeah, no, my wife and I are a little on the fence when it comes to like the kids. Being empty nesters are like, oh, we'd really like to find a place where there's no kids, but that's a little harder in like when you're outside of the city. Like so now we go to Austin for that.
Right.
We stay out here to just kind of hang out. But yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, and actually the other day we were talking about this, and I pulled up a picture from when we were dating.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, no, we were married at this point. But it was a picture of us at the ale house with our kids.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's like, well, we kind of did the same thing. I mean, it was like, it's not like we're not being really fair. Anyway, yeah, your taste change, much like your taste in beer changes.
Absolutely.
Your taste
in
like,
venue changes as well.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm just kidding.
Sure.
Sure. So I know that you're very customer centric. What is it that you do currently, and what do you see as some of the challenges in ensuring that you remain very customer centric? So customer satisfaction is always a big deal in this type of space. Anything that's service oriented, you have to be customer oriented. I don't think it works otherwise.
Absolutely.
So what are your general ideas there?
Well, we treat our customers like we treat our family. This is a family-run business. I'm reminded about that every time I look over at my coworkers because they're my family. I look over to the left, I see my wife. I look to the right, I see my daughter, my kiddo. And so the family fabric is part of the foundation here because we work this business as a family. So it's in the air. Mm-hmm. And if you're in here, you're part of that. We want to invite you in to be part of the Fifth Element family. Come by and meet me and Kim and Nico and Drea. We're all one big family and we're looking to grow.
Awesome.
And give us feedback. We want input. We have, when we put a new beer on tap, we'll talk to a group of people to come in and try it out and let us know. We've people that have come in, we've given them samples out of the fermenters of what's coming and get information. So just really involving them all in the process.
No, I think that's really great. I mean, obviously, it's like a norm in Cheers.
Yes.
You know,
Everybody knows your
everybody
name.
knows your name, and
Exactly.
that's always. I think a lot of people look for that.
Yeah.
You know, in general, like you like to go to places where they know who you are, and you know, it reminds me times of my brother-in-law who's really big on that. He'll go to certain restaurants and they know who he is, and they know his choices on the menu, and
Right.
they bring him stuff right away. So it's kind of like, again, that service orientation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder and harder to do,
Mm-hmm.
I find, because you guys don't know, I have a hospitality background.
Okay.
And so what I look at now, when I look at this, I'm like, this is a completely different world you're working in.
Yes.
Because when I was young and I was growing up in hospitality, it was there. I would hazard to say there was probably a greater acceptance of service orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's more like it's a job, and you know, oh, you're not treating me right, that kind of thing. You run into a lot of that. I mean, and it's the workforce. There's a lot of things that go into making. Yeah, it's generational.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So the beers themselves, how often do you guys think you'll be changing your offerings? Like, I know some places have like a new beer every month or 2 months or something like that. What's your plan?
Well, right now we have a couple of vacant taps that we're looking to fill, and we're also going to be rotating those. We've got a total of 12 taps, so we will have up to 12 offerings at once. Right now, I believe we're at 9 offerings for different brews. We've got our Oktoberfest in fermentation. That's going to be one of our seasonals. We have our Pickle Weiss, which is one of our summer seasonals that's probably going to have one more run before the weather gets a little bit colder. We do have
like November, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll take it off after Oktoberfest.
Exactly. Yeah, if we have to put a Santa Claus hat on the, pickle logo, then so be it. But it's intended as our summer release, but it's been pretty popular, so we may keep it on. But really, it's all about what Leander wants. We're very flexible in that. We love hearing what the community has to say about our beers. You know, we do tasting panel where we kind of have our small batch brews that we do on our pilot system that's half barrel, and we invite people out to give us their feedback, you know, and if we get enough thumbs up, we put it on the wall.
That's great.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know that we have a specific schedule for, you know, but right now, because we're so new, we're basically just trying out all the different recipes, seeing what people like, what they don't. You know, certain things we'll probably end up keeping as longer term staples, and other things will rotate. Mm-hmm. There may be something that we don't ever make again because nobody likes it, or, you know, something that we thought was going to be a seasonal that we have to keep on.
Right.
So we're just waiting to see.
I think that's great. I mean, I absolutely am enthralled by the brewing process and brewers and the creativity that they have when they come up with you know, different, and not everything hits.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's a hit and miss kind of thing. You know, you think certain things are going to work together, and they don't necessarily over time. And people's tastes change as well. Like, I'm the type of beer drinker that I'm seasonal. So I'm drinking lighter beers in the summer, and then I'll slowly get into my ambers, and then, you know, I'm on a deep stout by the time December rolls around. Climate change is messing with that big time because it's just not the same anymore. Now I have to travel to like Denver in December to get a good beer. You know, it's like
you need to be in the snow.
Right, you need to be somewhere it makes sense to be drinking that beer. It can't be 90 outside in December. You're like drinking a dark stout. But anyway, this has been great. I really, really appreciate you guys taking a few minutes to sit down with me and the people of Leander that watch the podcast or listen to the podcast. I think it's a great little insight to your business, a great insight to your philosophies and your community orientation. And I encourage all of the listeners and viewers of Lean and Leander to come on over to Fifth Element if you haven't done so already, because I've seen a few of you here. So yeah, no, this has been great. I really, really am excited for you guys, for your business. I'm a big, big fan. Okay, I don't hide it. I tell everybody about Fifth Element.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to bring our happy hour gang here from work. One of these weeks, as soon as it works out. It's always tough getting them all together. We're going to bring them all here and expose them to this, because I think it's a great addition to what we have in the community. as well as a great addition to the Independent Brewers of Texas. So,
thank
good
you
luck
so
to you
much.
guys. Thank you all so much for the time. I really, really appreciate it.
Yep.
Mike?
And just on a closing note,
Yeah.
we do have...
I was going to give you the chance, but go for it.
Sure thing. Yeah, just a quick closing note. We do also want to make sure everybody knows that we are the official home of Black Sheep Soul. That is our food truck, but they're really just a restaurant on wheels. They've got over 30 menu options. All of it is fantastic. Chef Billy Joe puts his heart and soul on every plate.
Mm-hmm.
So come and give them a try.
It really is exceptional food because you're going to be thinking about it as a food truck,
right?
And it's truly not a food truck. That's probably we've neglected mentioning that more, but I'm glad you brought it up because absolutely, and it's a great compliment to what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
It truly is because there's literally pairing you can do there.
Yeah.
I mean, there is, which is awesome.
And that is actually something we're going to do going forward. We'll have some beer pairing dinners that people can come to. And yeah, so
you guys are going to get a lot of my money.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, we'll make sure to keep it in the community.
There we go. Well, again, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming back to Lean In Leander, and we'll see you at the next episode.